Have you ever heard an album that made you cry? I'm not talking about albums that you cry to. I'm talking about an album that emotionally disturbed you. An album that emotionally challenged you. An album that made you see yourself in third person. They say your life doesn't end instantly. Instead, you slowly decay into emptiness. I'm gonna tell you a story. The date is 24th of August and it's kinda in the middle of the pandemic, and I'm at that point in my life where I was waiting to go to university. Like everything was done and I'm just living in a house with my roommates and just I have nothing else to do. Basically, like my life is waking up, doing my hobbies, trying to not get depressed because of the pandemic. I can't go out. And at one night I just stumbled across this video on YouTube which is 6 hours and 30 minutes, and it says The Caretaker everywhere at the end of time from stage 1 to 6, and that caught my attention and I was like, oh, I suppose that's an album and it's a really interesting album, but I didn't think much of it. I just moved on. Then days passed and then I saw a couple of memes of this album and I was like, oh, then I might check it. I should check it out because there's memes of it and it's kind of blowing up, and I was like, I should check this out. This must be something interesting. I got the idea that like, oh, this album is like, it kind of changes you and it kind of messes you up, and I didn't even think much of it. So one night I remember it was 24th of August, and one night I just decided to listen to it. I was like, yeah, this should be a fun experience. It was not a fun experience, like not a bit. It wasn't fun at all. It was good, but it wasn't fun. So I researched about it, and I don't know if you know, but the Everywhere at the End of Time is a project released over several days, like stage by stage, and I think stage 6 was released like at around 2018, and produced by a musician called James Kirby. And I researched about it and I realized that, oh, it's about dementia. Like it's supposed to simulate how you feel when you go through dementia, like stages from 1 to 6. Stage 1 when you just living normal, but then dementia hits, and stage 6 is like at the end of dementia. And I thought it was really interesting. I was like, I should check this out. So I was like, I'm gonna start exactly at 12 a.m. so I finish at around 7 a.m. and I wanted to listen to it front to back. I didn't want to stop. I was like, if I want to experience this album, I have to like experience it raw and the way it was supposed to be experienced. So I started it and oh my fucking god, man, like I feel like this might be one of the most important musical experiences I've ever had, and I think every single person should listen to this album because, man, I don't know where to begin. So this album starts off with stage 1, which is really normal ballroom music, really normal kind of music you hear. Ballroom music, that's like the best way I can describe it. Like really slow dance music, and it has so much effects on it that, like, although I don't listen to ballroom music, but the whole stage 1, sounded extremely nostalgic. Like I felt really nostalgic, although I never heard that kind of music. I mean, I've heard it, but I never really noticed it. I didn't even pay attention to it. But it felt nostalgic. I felt old, although I'm not that old. But just stage one, man, it made me feel really old. It made me feel like I'm like a 70-year-old dude who is like experiencing memories. That's the best way I can describe it. Like I get reminded of the past, and it's really nice and it's really fun to listen to. Like it sounds really good. But then I'm gonna put the description of the stages for you so you can get an idea of it. Here we experience the first signs of memory loss. This stage is most like a beautiful daydream, the glory of old age and recollection, the last of the great days. And that's really true. Like if you started, the whole stage one feels like a memory. It feels really nostalgic, and it's genuinely beautiful. Like it sounds extremely beautiful, and I love that. And then we move to stage two. This description said the stage is the self-realization and awareness that something is wrong with the refusal to accept that. More effort is made to remember, so memories can be more long-form with a little more deterioration in quality. The overall person mood is generally lower than the first stage and at the point before confusion starts setting in. And yeah, that's basically true. The stage two is for like, it's still the same thing, but the music is getting more glitchy. Like it sounds kind of scuffed. That's the best way I can describe it. Like when you're listening to it, you feel like something is wrong. It feels like someone is like messing with the record. And I feel like one of the great things about this album is that how long it is. And like for 1 hour you're listening to this ballroom music, and for the second hour it's the same thing, but it's a little bit weird. You kind of feel uncomfortable. That's the best way I can describe it. Like you feel like somebody is messing with you. You feel like somebody is like poking you, or because it is produced in a way that it becomes scuffed. That's the best way I can describe it. Like the music becomes, it's kind of like still the same thing, but it becomes irritating. It becomes like scuffy. And this was stage two was one of my favorites because of how much it made me feel. Like it made me feel something. It actually made me feel a lot of stuff. And stage three is the description says, here we are presented with some of the last coherent memories before confusion fully rolls in and the gray mist form and fade away. Finest moments have been remembered. The musical flow in places is more confused and tangled. As we progress, some singular memories become more disturbed, isolated, broken, and distant. These are the last embers of awareness before we enter the post-awareness stages. Stage three is basically you feel like, yeah, this is like. So the best way I can describe it is that, like, you know, at stage one it was normal music, you were enjoying it. At stage two you felt something wrong, was scuffed. But at stage three it feels like you know something is wrong, and it feels kind of like, when I was listening to it I felt kind of panicked because it's really heavy, like it's glitchy, and the music just keeps stopping and starting, and it just hits you, you know, like you kind of get averted and you're like, oh, I wish I could go back to what I was listening to. I wish I could go back to that. And you kind of, there are sounds that you don't recognize. Like there are sounds, but you don't recognize the instrument. They don't sound like instruments, they're just sounds. So you get confused. You're like, oh, this sounds familiar, but you can't catch it. You don't know what it is. So it throws you off. It really throws you off. Then we enter stage 4, which is post-awareness stage. Serenity and the ability to recall singular memories gives way to confusion and horror. It's the beginning of an eventual process where all memories begin to become more fluid through entanglements, repetition, and rupture. And that's basically stage 4. And I don't know if you listen to it, you realize all these tracks have names. Like we got the first track, it's just a burning memory. We got things that are beautiful and transient. We got a losing battle is raging. Like this, it's worded beautifully, and every track describes the mood of the track perfectly. But if you see stage 4, there is no name for the tracks. It's just post-awareness confusion. And Stage 5 too, it's just advanced play entanglement. So it's just like it says to you that like, oh, this is nothing, you can't feel anything. And that's the best way you can describe stage 4, because stage 4 was my least favorite. Like, I absolutely hated stage 4. It's really scary and it feels really disturbing. Like, I feel like me saying it, you don't really get why it's disturbing. You have to experience it, because this is where the point where you've been listening to it for like 4 hours or 5 hours, and the music starts and then it keeps stopping. It hits you in the heart, and that's really, really scary. Like, in the context of the album, it makes you feel like you're losing something, or you just forgot. That's the best way I can describe it, because there are noises going on and there is music, but the music is scuffed, so you're confused. You're left confusing to, what am I hearing? What am I hearing right now? And what is this? So stage 4 was my least favorite. And also there's a track called Temporarily Bliss State, and that was not temporary and not a bliss state. That was still the same thing. It feels horrible to listen to. And then stage 5, the description says post-awareness, stage 5, confusion and horror, more extreme entanglements, repetition and rupture can give way to calmer moments. The unfamiliar may sound and feel familiar. Time is often spent only in the moments, leading to isolation. And that's basically what it is. Stage 5 is, they're not tracks, they're ambient tracks, but they keep stopping. They're just noises. Like, everything is gone. Every sign of music and fun, it's gone. Every sign of memory, that's the best way I can describe it. It's gone, because it's just sounds. It's just ambient sounds going on, and then all of a sudden they stop, and then it goes to the next track. And the stops really hit you. Like, I don't know why, but this album is produced in a way like when you're listening to it and then it stops, it kind of like it just hits you in the heart, and you're like, the fuck just happened? Like, it really messes up with your mind. It really messes up with you. And this was really scary. Like, stage 5 was extremely scary, where it's like to the point where it's been 5 hours, yeah, and it's extremely scary. And the best way I can describe it is like, it's not music, it's just ambient, and you feel like you're gone. You feel like you're losing it. And stage 6 is without description, which is the last stage. And man, I don't know where to start from this one, because like the first track, it says, a confusion so thick you forget forgetting, a brutal bliss is beyond this empty defeat, long decline is over and place in the world fares away. This stage, man, like, it fucked me up, because stage 6 starts with full ambient, and it's like 1 hour and a half of full ambient. There's nothing, there's emptiness, there's noises, and if you've heard ambient music, you know what I'm talking about. But it feels alone. Like, when you're listening to it, you feel isolated, you feel like you want to go back, you feel like you lost everything, you feel like you had something, you had the music to be the background music, you had the music to enjoy, and now it's emptiness. Now it's just a noise, and it's going on and on and on and on, and you expect something to happen, but nothing happens, because everything is over and your memories are gone, and what you have is just forgotten and gone. That's the best way I can describe it. So you feel extremely heavy and empty inside. You feel really, really hard. It feels really hard. It felt really hard to listen to stage 6. Like, it was the hardest out of all of these. And it's so weird, because it's just ambient music, and stage 6 by itself, like, if someone starts listening to stage 6, it means nothing to them. But for a listener who started listening from the whole thing at the start, it means a lot of stuff. It means like, it's really heavy on you. And the last 6 minutes or 7 minutes of this album is where you totally just hits you in the heart. And man, like, so what happens is that if you want to listen to the album, I'm gonna spoil it, but if you want to listen to the album, like stop watching, but I'm gonna spoil what happened. So at the end of stage 6, the track Place in the World fades away. Still the ambient music, but then all of a sudden it cuts out and you hear silence. You hear like record scuff, and then all of a sudden you hear like a gramophone getting started, and all of a sudden slowly a beautiful piece, like an absolutely beautiful piece of music starts settling in, and it starts playing. And at that moment, man, like when I was listening to it, when that hit, I just started crying, man. Like I started crying uncontrollably. I started crying. I felt like I just lost my parents. Like it felt really heavy. And I think the reason is that it seriously sounds like, oh, you've been listening to ambient for so long and you forgot what you started with. It kind of reminds me, kind of rewinds back to the whole thing. And it's absolutely beautiful. Like the piece is absolutely beautiful, but it made me cry so hard. It's such a beautifully produced track. Like it's not a clear track. It feels like there's a lot of ambient and there's a lot of reverb on it, so it sounds really like heavy and it sounds so echoish, but man, it's absolutely beautiful and it just hits you so hard. So when you listen to it, you're like, fuck, man. Like you get reminded of the whole 6 hours you spent listening to this album. You get reminded every bit of it. And it genuinely feels like, you know, when they say like, oh, when you die, for like you see your whole life flash before your eyes, it genuinely feels like it. It feels like now you're dead, and that 6 minutes is just your life flashing on your eyes, flashing before your eyes, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I remember like listening to it, and then when I finished, oh, and also there's a 1 minute silence at the end of the album, which is absolutely crushing. Like it's soul crushing. And I remember crying for like 15 minutes, and I didn't even know why. I didn't feel sad or anything. I just felt empty and lost, and it made me cry for so long, man. It made me cry so hard, and I loved it at the same time. I was like, that was a beautifully produced piece of music. That was like amazing. And I couldn't sleep. Like I remember it was around like 7 a.m. and my friend woke up and they were down there. My friend was like making breakfast, and then I went down and I was like, fuck. And one of my friends asked me like, oh, you're up early? And because I never wake up early, and I was like, no, and I was listening to an album last night. And then they were like, what did you listen to? And I was like, I don't want to talk about it. You should listen to it for yourself. And I explained to one of my friends what it was, and he should listen to it. And I don't know if he listened to it, but I really wish he listened to it, man, because it's really fucked me up. And for the next week, this is all I could think of. I couldn't get it out of my mind, the experience I had listening to it and how beautiful it was. And I loved it so much. Like, this is so precious. And it made me really scared. Like, if this, like, it's supposed to simulate what dementia feels like. And man, fuck, man. I feel really bad for people who have dementia. And as soon as I listened to this album, I realized how scared I am of having dementia if I have dementia in the future. Because this was a really painful experience. Alright, I really recommend you listen to that album. It's music. It's beautiful music. Thank you for watching this video. Do like and subscribe if you want, and thank you so much. Bye.